This meeting is being recorded.
Amazing. So I am going to share my screen. So I'm Evelyn, and this is the Gutsy community training for volunteers. And yeah, give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna share window. Amazing. Great. So yeah, I know that it's seeming a little bit weird that I'm not going into full presentation mode, but for some reason the screen doesn't let me do that. So I'm just gonna go with it from there. And yeah, hopefully this is gonna be a great kind of introduction to, yeah, I guess sponsorships and me, and yeah. So yeah, first off, I just wanted to say like a huge thank you to all of you. Like it's such a warming and welcoming community to be a part of, and I know that you guys as our volunteers are the heart and soul, and I mean, you guys just do so much for us and our boots on the ground and have been through so much, and I just want to say a big thank you. You know, I can't wait to meet people more face to face. And yeah, again, I'm really sorry that this was that this had to be honestly a video chat, because I would have loved to kind of get to meet you guys, but I am currently not in the same time zone, so that's why this way. But as we kind of move forward, I'll be back in the same time zone and hopefully get to chat with you screen to screen or face to face. Who am I? So I'm the manager of sponsorships and cause marketing. I was actually diagnosed with IBD a year ago. I used to be cleaning the oceans, now dedicated to finding cure for Crohn's and colitis. I've worked on agency and I've worked in-house, and I'm basically leading the build of our overall sponsorship and cause marketing program. Yeah, fun fact about me, I guess, is that I've worked with some celebrities, and yeah, they're definitely not as cool as you think they are. But yeah, let's jump right into it, right? So our goal in terms of sponsorship, and my goal, of course, is to equip and empower you to create and manage long-term, beneficial, high impact, and high return community sponsorships. So how, right? We'll cover a lot of these things today in terms of like just partnerships. Where do you start? Who do you reach out to? What do you do when they're like interested? How do we work together as an organization with your DC, and kind of like how do we retain them as well? In terms of impact and potential, like these are some of the current sponsors, like maybe not working with us directly right now, but at least in our network. And I didn't want to just show you a overview of like just any random ones. I wanted you to know that, I mean, there's so much potential for us, and I'm really excited to be part of that, and I'm excited for you to be part of that. And yeah, in terms of benefits, right? Like I think there's so many benefits in terms of working with corporations, right? One, they just open so many doors, right? Like that could be in terms of opportunity, that could be in terms of reach, in terms of money, resources maybe that we need, or maybe in like even experience where like we're like, you know what, we don't have that in-house. How could we maybe get our support? They can also help build a brand reputation and our credibility. You know, I think there's something to be said with corporate entities that are just so well known. And then when you pair that with something like us, that's, I mean, we're getting there, but our mission and what we've been able to accomplish is also incredibly strong. The two come together in a really interesting marriage. And I think there's a lot of benefits, obviously, for us, but also for them. We have an amazing, large, and dedicated community, but I think, of course, the more people we get involved, the more people we get excited, more people that we bring on board, the more and larger our community is going to become. Of course, raising awareness and recognition. So again, with communications and things like that, there's so much potential and so much, you know, budget and things on that side of things that it can really propel our mission forward. And of course, the last one is an increase in revenue. I mean, we are a nonprofit, and we need to kind of make sure that our money is going in the right places, and these guys can so obviously be a catalyst for that. In terms of like the organization where I don't know, like want to kind of move in terms of sponsorship, I think it really comes down to relationships. And I can imagine that a lot of you, even if sponsorships might not be the thing that you've had experience in, you've probably had a lot of good relationships in your life. And that's kind of the mentality we want to use while moving forward. So instead of like having a ton of sponsors, even if we have a little bit of sponsors, but they're really of a large quality. And yeah, I guess in terms of making sure that, yeah, like we're growing them, we're fostering them. It's not about just bringing them in and then like having turnover, you know. Instead of just becoming part of a Gutsy Walk, they're becoming a part of our mission. You know, Gutsy Walk is not I don't know, we'll talk about this later, but Gutsy Walk isn't just, you know, the end all be all. It's actually the beginning. You know, it's the place that people get really excited. Instead of just thinking on the short term, thinking on the long term. How can we build this together? What can we already get them to agree to up front? Instead of quick wins, like meaningful relationships, instead of settling, like how do we grow together? And again, like revenue is important, but instead of like using even just the wording in terms of like increasing donation amount, like, you know, how do they want to increase their impact on our mission? You know, that's important. And of course, instead of turnover, like I mentioned, we want to move towards retention. How do we keep them on? How do we get them excited? How do we grow them over time? A quick side, I know that this kind of, you know, all walk locations have different goals and things like that, but I just wanted to put it into perspective that in terms of our goal and like divided by our Gutsy Walk locations, like if we just divided that, that would only be $2,000 per location. I truly just believe in just in our team, our DCs, you guys as volunteers, like there's so many amazing, capable people in this organization, and I am just so humbled to be a part of it. And I truly believe that we got this. And again, like it's about putting yourself out there, the actions that you're doing, the relationships that you're fostering. You know, I mean, yes, we do have funding targets, but like again, there's also a lot of wins in terms of like reaching out and fostering that as well. So where do you start? You know, I mean, top question. And I think that always starts with making a great prospecting list. And these are my suggestions kind of for you. Number one, I mean, where relationships are built, you know, those are built on trust, and, you know, that's kind of relational connections. So in friends, in family, maybe in professional context that you've had a really strong relationship over your career, and reaching out to them first. You know, they know you, they trust you, you know, they kind of have a vested interest in you. And if you feel comfortable, you know, this could be an amazing opportunity for them to get involved. Number two, I would say past sponsors and supporters. And I would, again, like, think about like working with your DC on like, who are the past Gutsy Walk sponsors? Who are the past like corporate donors that want to increase their impact? You know, again, it's really about relationship building and bringing these people back time and time again, and growing them, of course, as well. And number three, again, I would say like targeted. You know, there's a couple, right? Like in terms of overall sponsorship strategy, there are a couple industries hopefully that might be helpful for you that we've identified that there is probably some good chances of funding there. So healthcare and healthcare products, and I think that probably makes a lot of sense to you. Food production services and retail, just because there's such a strong bond there with our community. Financial services, mostly for the fact that they tend to do a lot of work with their communities because of the budgets that they have. And the last one, and I think this one is the most important key for you guys, is who in your communities are actually supporting charities or charities like us, or maybe there's a new business that you think it could potentially support us as well. You know, I can't say this enough, but you guys are the boots on the ground, and you know your communities way better than I do. And so I would challenge you to think about and ask yourself that question of, yeah, who in my community do I know, or have I seen a sign, or, well, that would be a cool idea. Because I mean, just don't doubt yourself. You know, like, you know your community, you know, like that. So yeah, it's just kind of taking that time to sit aside and think about it. And I mean, same for me, like I still struggle sometimes. I'm like, okay, but once I take that step back, it usually gets a lot easier. In terms of like keeping track of the prospects that you're working with, right? So it would be great to obviously identify a prospect, and I kindly ask that you do let your DC know that of your potential prospect. And the reason is the DC, your regional DC, will need to check if there's been any previous relationships with them. And we have a system for that, and they have access. So it would be really good, because we don't want to, cross over over each other. We want to work together in terms of like, maybe you have a contact, they have a contact. And also, like, what's our past relationship? Because that also frames the conversation, right? So if there is, a past relationship, then you, would need to work with your DC to understand the background and the relationship, and then come up with a plan of attack together. Reach out to the prospect, or maybe not, and then keep your DC in the loop of kind of all your actions, so they can log that for us as an organization to know, so that way, as it turns out around, we just know what's going on, and if there's any turnover, then it's a smooth transition. If there is no background, that's amazing, and then you'll let your DC know, and they will take the information for you, put them in our system, and you're free to kind of reach out to the prospect. And again, exciting times. So how do you reach out? So before you reach out, I think the most underrated skill in terms of like just fundraising or sponsorships or things like that is just, they're humans, put yourself in their shoes. And the most important thing is really, like, when you're going towards them, like, I think just as humans, we just want to be understood. And especially in a business context, I think there's a lot of empty asks being made, and that can get very frustrating for companies. And so I think when they got a thoughtful ask, it's very different. So again, some questions to ask, like, what are your potential sponsors' interests? Like, how could we help them, or are we interesting to them, or is there a component of our community that's interested to them? Who are your potential sponsors' audience? I think this is probably one of the biggest ones, because at the end of the day, they are looking for business, and if they can do good and also kind of increase their bottom line, that's powerful. What connections does your sponsored brand or contact have to our mission? I think there's something to be said about those brands that have some obvious connections to us that make a lot of sense. And then what information, data, or story from Pros and Cons Canada will resonate with them. It's about bringing them along on the journey. It's about connecting with them, and walking away from that conversation with, they're just not going to forget you. So what is that story? What is that piece of information or data that's really going to hook them in? What are potential sponsors' overall goals? Because again, that's something that they need to reach by the end of the year. What problem can we help them solve? And I guess the last one is, what is your why? Would your story help connect them further to our mission? I think we're all here for different reasons, and it's just such a powerful mechanism, and don't doubt your power. I think there's something to be said. So for example, I'll just say, like, here's an example of a reach out that we've done recently. So what we know, and how do you translate that into your pitch, right? So we know that they've been a past Gutsy Walk sponsor. So I know that I'm going to acknowledge and thank them and mention that in my email. We haven't been great at keeping up our relationship and communication with them. Acknowledge it, apologize. I think it's super underrated. It's super underrated. And, people are really shocked with that honesty, and there's no reason that we shouldn't own up to it. We know each year that they do select a charity to work with, and know the past charities that they have been working with. So again, mention that we know impacting communities is important to them. You also look at their communications, and their employees are of utmost importance to them, and they love to be active in their community. So mention that we can support them with employee engagement, and we would love to get them to support and get them going active even more in their community. They're proudly a Canadian company. It's all over their website. So again, mention Canada or Canadian. and their past contact is their president. So again, that's somebody that is the top of the food chain. So we want to mention that we know that their time is valuable and that we're kind of taking from that. I won't read the entire thing out, but again, what I do think is important, like just, or maybe I will read some of it out, right? It's like opening with like, we hope that you've been off to a good year, you know, it hasn't been the easiest. If it's somebody that you don't know, or again, introduce yourself. And again, that, yeah, as the organization moves forward, like we are looking for high impact relationships. And again, like I said, we're really thankful for their support in the specific Gutsy walk, and we want to apologize again that we haven't been the best over the last couple of years. And yeah, I think yeah, and again, like their time is valuable, and we just want 30 minutes of their time. So yeah, again, hopefully, like, and you'll be able to read it. We'll send this to you, but hopefully that gives you some enlightenment and like some support in terms of how to craft. And in terms of reaching out, like methods, you know, I think, what is the best chance of success? And if one way doesn't work, like what is my backup plan? Like in person, you know, the air bump, but now we can all like hopefully hug each other sometime soon, you know. It's coming back, and people are craving that relationship together. So again, in person, I mean, if you can get an in-person meeting, that's amazing. The phone, also amazing. And yeah, of course, email is there as well. So I kind of, it's, yeah, try with in person, try with phone, and email is fine as well. But again, like you will be able to gauge in terms of your contact of what is their preferred way of like reaching out, you know. Again, you know the relationship best, and it's about reading the situation. So if someone's keen to meet up in person, amazing. If they're kind of hesitant and say, hey, do you mind sending me an email about that? Like follow up with an email and be like, could we do a Zoom after? You know, it all depends on the comfortability. So now, like, if you're in a conversation with them and like, you know, they pick up or whatnot and things like that, I think, yeah, it's also about, okay, like questions, right? Like what is important to them? How are they trying to grow their business? What difficulties have they been facing throughout the pandemic? Are there any deal breakers that you need to know of? And again, like we're humans, like just truly care about what they have to say. You know, it's not about rushing to the next person to ask for the next donation. It's really about being present in the moment and yeah, just being there for them. Empathize. Again, like there is another person on the side of what you're trying to say, and any worries that they bring up, trying to bring up potential solutions on how we could support them with that, you know, or experiences that we've had where we've handled something like that before. And yeah, and again, like make it memorable, like ensure that is that contact that you're talking to the person that you need to be talking to, where should you send things, and also like if possible, like have something to leave behind that will remind them of you. So for an example, yeah, just again, another conversation we're in with HelloFresh. And so questions that I was asked them in our first discovery call is like, what is their strategy? You know, and then so their answer was like their overall strategy was in the works. What programs have been important for them? You know, they're working with youth, healthy food choices, but also they're in a very transformational state and they're looking to expand. Are there any particular groups of people that they're trying to reach and in what areas, you know? So for them, again, like youth, elderly, and they're growing their market in British Columbia, but again, they're just growing in general, if you've ever seen HelloFresh. And yeah, do they have knowledge on Crohn's and Colitis Canada? And usually there's some sort of personal tie or not, and then you can, yeah, educate them a little bit. But for example, our contact there knew about the diseases and her grandfather suffered severely from Crohn's. So again, like I didn't have to go into explaining that to her. She kind of knew it. Were there any recent sponsorships that they've been doing? And they recently did a sponsored run in Vancouver. And what about like, what are their takes about working together? Are they excited? Are they iffy? Like, you know, just gauge the conversation. And they were just so excited about working together, and they want to explore further. So that was interesting, right? But again, the questions and the response, and that will help you like in terms of the next steps. Now qualifying, like they're interested. Now what do we do? So in terms of what you'll need to do next is it will be time to get your DC involved. And so the most important thing to keep in mind in terms of an offer is that it should be tailored. So based on the research and information that you've gained from your conversation with them. Your DC should be introduced into the conversation at this time. And then jointly together, it's time to proceed about how to go about the conversation, how to go about the offer, and how, like, is that going to work for both sides? And then in terms of next steps, you know, like if this is to progress, it will be a joint effort between you and the DC. The DC, in terms of the organization, will need to kind of handle contracts and things internally. So yeah, it is key that your DC does get involved. Again, like it's going to be in terms of offers and getting in the groove and stuff. Don't freak out if there's a lot of back and forth. I think this is super normal, and yeah, no, don't get too nervous about that. Management. So like now you brought this new community partner on board. What do you do? Am I done? Absolutely not. So again, I think the most important thing is to find a way of working with your DC. Who is going to be the primary point of contact? If it will be you as the volunteer, then what we would ask is that your DC is CC'd in all of the communication, so at least they can at least log things internally. So for example, if for whatever reason, which I hope this doesn't happen at all, is that you decide maybe that you need to take a step back from Crohn's and Colitis Canada, then there's still that relationship there so that somebody can pick that up. The last thing you would want is to drop that person or company. If it is the DC that you decide should be the primary point of contact, then there should be an open conversation whether you as the volunteer want to still be included in correspondence and like still work together. So yeah, again, the most important is just having that open conversation. Wow, that conversation with your DC, and yeah, and again, and to be ready for the walk as well. We just need to make sure that with community sponsorships in terms of entitlements, we just need to make sure that we're delivering on what we promise. So making sure that that's also possible. And it's a balancing act. Like I think there will be some situations where it will be one way, the other way. Communicating with that partner is also a balancing act, right? So knowing how frequently to reach out, how not frequently to reach out. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. In terms of ongoing communication, there's some good times that I just wanted to outline that are good times to recognize. So when we have exciting news, get them pumped up, like in your area, get them excited. Ensure that we're following up on our sponsorship activations. So just know, like, hey, like social media stuff, or hey, this is coming up, or you know, and also like if it's been silent for a long time, I think corporates or people just can get busy, and also like let's just make sure that we're that we're thinking of them. I think that's important, and making sure that we're just fostering and keeping consistent communication with them. Growth and retention, right? The walk is over, and what happens? We just see them next year. So this is going to deserve its own training that will come a little bit later, because like I said at the beginning, Gutsy Walk is not the end, it's the beginning. We would like to retain people and be a little bit more cyclical in our actions. So yeah, until then, I just want to just cliche, but people won't remember what you did. It's going to be how they made you feel. Make them feel excited, like I just said, like pumped, like you want to build something with them. And also thinking opportunities, like maybe it's a gala, maybe it's next year's Gutsy Walk. Like there are so many opportunities just outside of the realm of Gutsy Walk for people to get, or corporates to get involved. And remember, this is just the first step. Tools and processes. So I just wanted to have one last slide about in terms of volunteers versus DC expectations. So as a volunteer, you can be responsible for potential sponsors that you reach out to. You need to keep your DC updated on all of your actions. Responsible for bringing your DC into the conversation when, for example, like you're deciding on an offer to a potential sponsor. Responsible for bringing your DC into the conversation when a contract is being signed. And again, once the agreement is signed, then yeah, you can continue being in the involvement. Versus in terms of DCs, they are accountable for all community sponsorship. So you guys can have a very open and honest conversation about the responsibility. But again, for them, it's about really keeping tabs on kind of their community sponsorships in their area. Be there as support, so step in. They're there to support you. I'm there to support you, and for them specifically to craft the offer and make sure a contract is signed. And yeah, they should be the primary relationship manager for all confirmed community sponsors. And yeah, they're accountable to the organization to ensure we're fostering long-term and beneficial partnerships. So hopefully that maybe gives a little clarity, because I think sometimes that was a little bit fuzzy, at least in the past. There will be a toolkit sent out to you with this video that is going to include some initial pitch templates, email templates, phone call templates, key messages, and also a proposal deck that you can use to send out. And again, just who to reach out to. For me, I just want to say that I don't want any divides. So any questions, comments on sponsorships, you're excited about it, you're not excited about it, literally anything, just come, like, I guess my door is open always. In terms of your DC, I mean, I think I've hammered it home, but yeah, all in any updates regarding community sponsorships and working on that together. And then, of course, of all, any in terms of like deliverables or things like that, just know that she's responsible for that, but it should be going through your DC, just so that she's not inundated with too much. She's a superior person, but yeah, there's just a lot going on. So if we can streamline that for her, that would be amazing. And last but not least, like, just know that we're here for you. Like, this is, again, I know this is new. I know maybe it's feeling a little intimidating, but know that, like, we are here for you. We've got your back. And yeah, so with that, thank you so much. I would love to say, like, just go rock it. I have all the faith in you guys. And yeah, thanks so much for being amazing. Yeah, stop sharing. And yeah, hopefully this has been helpful. So thanks so much.